My job when I took over the portfolio was developing the new water as really a transformational solution to our water needs. Mr. Lee Kuan Yew gave us a very important challenge. We were able to tap 90% of the water that falls onto Singapore's sky. So he says, Yaacob, can you get the extra 10% so that we collect everything? So we turn to the rivers that we have. For example, we went to Pasir Ris, Sungai Api-Api. How do we turn that into our drinking water supply? Of course, the biggest challenge at that time was the Marina Barrage, right? Again, it was a challenge that MM gave to us. And he gave it long before we were part of the Environment Ministry. He says, can you turn this into a place for recreational purposes? And it came during my time where we were able to convert Marina Reservoir into a reservoir. So I thought the occasion was, for lack of a better word, very sacred. It was a moment of truth that Singapore has solved this problem, because from a dirty, smelly river, we have turned it into our water supply, and we have turned it into a place for recreational purposes. Mr. Lee Kuan Yew made that speech. When I took over, I understood the importance of water. It says everything in the Singapore government must bend at the knees towards water, because it's about survival. Everything else will take second position compared to water. And that became the mantra actually in the ministry when I was around. I will tell you that MM paid close attention to this. Every time he put up a paper to Cabinet on water, he will read from page to page, line to line, because he knew and he knows that water is very crucial for us. The ABC Waters project, right? It was something that we conceived internally, but when we presented to him, he bought it. He saw it was a brilliant idea. It's an interesting story behind it. And I remembered one day, it was at the National Day rally, PM put up this sign that shows the list of the things that you cannot do in the reservoir. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. So we went back, is that the best way to approach our water body? We were building, when I came in, it was in the middle of the construction, the Serangoon Reservoir and the Punggol Reservoir, right? They were probably about 2-3 kilometers apart. But the water were at different levels, were different elevation. So we needed to fix a canal between the two waters so that we can balance it. It was a PUB project to solve an engineering problem. But together with HDB and URA, it turned into the Punggol Waterway. So I think that whole of government approach to see how we not only husband our water, but leverage on our water resources to improve the quality of life was, I think, the priority then. So I think we got it right in ensuring that we can manage our consumption, and to do that is to also get Singaporeans to treat their water properly so that they know that that water that they are now putting their feet in, putting the canoe in, is their drinking water supply. So they need to keep an eye on it in terms of cleanliness. There was a meeting in Montreal on climate change. I went to the meeting, and when I was seated where Singapore was supposed to sit, I was shocked. I was not at the main table with all the other countries. I was at a table with other countries, frankly, you don't want to be associated with, who have not signed on to the KP, the Kyoto Protocol. I came back and I said, what's going on? Why don't we sign on to this, right? Obviously, when we sign on, we have to comply. That compliance may mean certain economic sort of projects may have to be relooked at and so on and so forth. But we pursued. I was able to convince my cabinet colleagues, and we signed on to it. By signing on to the Kyoto Protocol and being a member of the international community, we show a certain degree of responsibility. And today, in fact, Singapore is looked up as a very important active partner in the fight against climate change. I think signing on has demonstrated that we are able to be an active player in that space without compromising on our economic competitiveness. Today, for example, we have an entire sector of the green economy growing up, green financing, green projects, and so on and so forth. So we actually have arrived at a very good landing point. Our challenge has always been how to make a living out of anything that happens to us, right? I think the green economy was the way we turn it around. So I think we realized that we can, out of adversity, create opportunities. I think that's the mantra that we live by, and I'm glad that we have that mantra, because if we accept every challenge as a disaster, then we will not grow. But if we look at every challenge as an opportunity, I think we will grow. The story behind the Smart Nation has an interesting anecdote to it, right? I came into the ministry in 2011. My chaps were going to places like Barcelona, Colombia, and the idea of a smart city was already banded around, basically. So they came back and presented, right, to the meeting and says, hey. So I said, that's interesting. What does it mean, right? So it's the idea of using technology, data, to predict and then to improve quality of life. So we said, let's try it out, right? So we started, small experiment. One of the experiments which I've never mentioned before was that we wanted to set up sensors in order to collect data on the roadside, right? So that then we can monitor traffic, air pollution, and so on and so forth. So our chaps at IDA at that time came out with this, they call it AG box. It's almost half the size of a refrigerator. It's called an aggregate box that's parked on the traffic light. It was horrible looking, I can tell you that. It was terrible, but it serves the purpose of allowing all the agencies to have one box, put your sensors there, collect your data, so they can do all the analysis and what have you. GovTech was initially under my supervision, also working to see how the whole of government can also be changed towards what we call a digital government. It has to be whole of government. It cannot be one agency says, no, I'm going to stay analog and not digital. It has to be across the board. What PM did, I think, was the right thing to do, was park the Smart Nation office in the Prime Minister's office, so it's at the top. Everybody has to listen. So we once have to bend our knees to water, now we have to bend our knees towards the whole digital transformation of Singapore.